Bryce Petty, two-time Big 12 championship quarterback at Baylor. Sic'Em 365 Radio and 365 Sports joins us now. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoke, and David Smoke. Bryce, young man, how you been?
Doing well, fellas. How about yourselves?
We're doing really, really well. What are your thoughts of what you see right now with college football, with things that were not available when you were at Baylor and waited your time, and especially not only the open transfer portal, but also NIL?
What do I do? Man, I think in short, it's definitely already implemented itself as changing the entire culture and changing the entire demographic of what we knew of as college football when I was there. I think you're seeing kids nowadays that aren't focused nearly as much as the coaching staff and the culture and the players as it is, what can you offer me? And then more importantly as well is how quick can I leave here to go find money somewhere else? And so I think it's just changing the entire dynamic of what college football is. We knew it, the purity of it. It's going to be a business. It already is a business.
Bryce, what kept you from, even because you would have had to sit out a year, what kept you from transferring outside of sitting out a year? Because you were already not starting until your third year.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I've talked to this point several times when I talk about my story. I mean, it was never really ingrained in me to jump ship, and not to say, I mean, everybody's situation is different. From a timing perspective and what else is out there now, it is a lot easier to transfer. But for me, man, it was I put the time in. I committed to Coach Bryles. I committed to our staff and our locker room. And so I wanted to see that through, regardless of, if I was going to get 3 games or if I was going to get 30 games.
Bryce, you saw the quarterback competition this past spring. Blake Shain named the starter. Gary Bohannon subsequently into the transfer portal and now going to USF. I mean, in theory, I guess you could kind of speak to 2 points. I mean, first of all, your thoughts on Shain getting the nod and Gary's exit, but also the handling by Dave Aranda to do it when he did. And, I mean, he could have, Bryce, just dragged this out until the fall and had Gary Bohannon still on the roster. So what are your thoughts on both sides of that coin?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a major component to how coaches navigate this situation, because now you're at a place where it's going to be really hard to recruit quarterbacks to actually grow and develop them, knowing that, hey, if I don't play, I'm just going to go somewhere else. Again, with Gary's situation, it's a little bit different. He's played. Blake Shain was called the starter, so I get that and understand that. But what's interesting about it from Aranda's point is I think what you see is what you get, which is a beautiful thing in the world of sports nowadays. He's not going to sit there and hold Gary, even though he's going to lose a roster spot. He's going to lose a seasoned vet, a guy that can win games, backing up. Because the problem is now if Blake Shain, knock on wood here, gets injured, your whole team's in trouble. And so I think a lot of teams are going to, have to navigate that in a really interesting way. But, to Gary, I can't thank the guy enough for all the time and effort he's put into the program. And you can tell he's a great leader. I just think that, at least me being on the sidelines, no pun intended, I've already done that too damn much. But me being on the sidelines and kind of watching from afar, Blake, I think, did present a few of the intangibles that might have edged out Gary in terms of, can we win close games? Can we stay in games where we should be out? And those are all things that I know Coach Aranda and Coach Bell and Grimes all had to weigh when they made this decision. And now it's about sticking behind your decision and allowing Blake Shain to really develop as a leader, knowing that he is the guy now, and it's not a chase or a limbo. Now it's kind of game on, and it's your locker room. Take it over.
Speaking of that, it's your locker room. Back when you were there at Baylor and saw what RG3, Nick Florence, yourself did, what's it like? Who is in charge of making sure the locker room stays together no matter the quarterback decision?
Yeah, I think it was really by committee. It's not any one guy. It's kind of it's a group. It's a community. Whether it's senior led, whether it's position group led. I think you have to have veteran guys, and that's where now I think that's kind of moved over from more of the defensive skill position or some of our skill positions where it was last year to being more interior, on that offensive defensive line. They need to know that, Baylor is going to run them. It's going to be, the games that we win and lose are most likely going to be won at line of scrimmage. And they need to take a whole lot of pride in that. And to your point, it starts in the locker room. And so that's where I think that most of that leadership goes to those interior guys. And that's the way it needs to be. Your big guys up front need to set the tone in the locker room and how, practices are orchestrated. The level of intensity that guys have need to run through them. And that's what we always had. We always had really solid leaders that did a really good job of setting that tone early.
Bryce, Bijan Robinson just got a Lambo in an NIL deal. What would have been the most on-brand NIL deal for Bryce Petty as a young college student?
Shoot, man. I might say a Benelli shotgun, big duck hunter, something like that. I don't necessarily know if I can fit in a Lamborghini. I actually have a picture that I'll send you guys over Twitter of me getting out of a Lamborghini. Doesn't fit well. But that's the shoot, man. The day and age of a kid, just wearing sweats and ordering through Taco Bell is it ain't that anymore. And so the money's going to have to be shelled out. And I just hope that guys still have the same mentality to prove and give everything to that locker room and give everything on that field in college to get to the next level to where you can truly, enjoy the fruits of your labor versus, hey, you're a kid out of high school that we really want you. Here's a Lamborghini. I'm not saying that's Bijan Robinson because that dude's a freak and it's definitely produced for them. But I think it's one of those things that's going to change the dynamic of how kids treat college football. Whereas, before it was, like I said before, the purity of the sport is to get to the NFL, and now it's almost just to be a 5-star recruit.
No, it is, and get your best deal. Do you feel like with what is now the college football landscape that it would almost be something that each student athlete, no matter the sport, should have to take a class in money management? Now, you could be 50 years old and still screw up money. You could be 70 years old or 28 years old. Do you feel like that's something that's important that should be a part of the academic, whatever it's called?
Smokey, it's almost the only thing that I feel like from a practical standpoint or a foundation of life that you can take from college outside of college is how to manage your finances. And what I have seen just in my very short stint in the NFL and the way the world is now, it's all about keeping up with the Joneses. And a lot of times Joneses aren't methodical. Joneses aren't living in a 3-bedroom house that's just what they need. It's the 7-bedroom house with 12 bathrooms for 12 people that they don't have in the room. It's the private jet going from, Austin to Waco for no reason. And so, having financial literacy, to your point, at any age is paramount to your ability to have a purpose-filled life. It is not all about the money. It's not all about the showy flashiness of it. And so I just think that if they do not implement that we're causing way more harm than good. And the people giving, most of the time, this is a generality, but most of the people giving the money to the kids already have their nest egg. These kids don't. And so how to incorporate an opportunity to show them, men and women that are playing sports, how to protect that for the longevity of life, knowing that your career will end one day on the field. And then it has to be just Bryce, the everyday, target shopper. And that needs to be okay. And so it's going to be one of those things that I just love for the NCAA or the institutions and universities to implement something that has that financial literacy aspect.
Bryce, in terms of your campus life and all of that, I mean, going to Baylor and being a Baylor Bear, there's this fear that I think is kind of, it's way too early to be worrying about college football becoming professional football, to where basically you're only a Baylor Bear in name only. Like it's like basically getting drafted almost, but you commit to them. But as far as like that part of being the student athlete, that campus life, how much more do you feel like that I don't know, gave you that feeling of being a part of the university and being a part of something other than just, let's say being a part of a professional football team? Was there a major difference as far as that goes?
Oh, I mean, I think it's just the timeline of life, right? I think that whenever you kind of fly the nest, if you will, that you're not under your parents' roof anymore, you're out on your own. I think you really, and again, this is more of a personal story here, but I really found myself in college by that first time away, to where when I did enter into the NFL, again, I had just a different mindset about life. And I think if you expedite that process and make it too quick, again, guys and girls are going to start having an identity crisis to, who Bryce is or who Joe is or John or whoever it is, and what they mean to the world. And so having that college campus time, walking to class just like everybody else, sitting in class, taking notes, taking tests, that's just really important, because you have to know that, again, personal story, but football is a vehicle, and it's not who you are, just what you do. And that's the beauty of being around college athletics and that time in your life.
What are your thoughts on what you've seen in a short amount of time from Dave Aranda?
I love him. I think he's exactly what Baylor needs. I think that there's a tenacity to his side of coaching that's quiet. He just goes about his business. And again, there's so much more now that I'm an old fart that you kind of look back and learn about what football taught you in life. And I think he's a life teacher through football. And I love when coaches are life teachers through football. And you can tell the guys really respond to him. They bought into his system. They bought into who he is. They know who he is on Monday, just like they know who he is on Saturday. And to a guy that is kind of, again, outside looking in, it's refreshing. It's what college football needs.
What do you think of Blake Shain taking over as starting quarterback?
Yeah, I just love for him to slide. I think that he's got a ton of intangibles. I think he absolutely spins the rock. And now it's about growing up. Now it's about leading that team, becoming more vocal, taking, the shoulders and the weight of what that means to represent a university on the football field as a starting QB. Is something that's probably not talked a whole lot about, but there's a massive weight and magnitude to what that entails. And I have no doubt he's going to be really, really good at doing both of those, carrying that weight and playing on the field.
Is sliding something we take for granted?
It is when you don't see a DB coming at you about 20 miles an hour. Or a big old lineman.
Yeah, RG3 kind of struggled with that in the NFL. And I mean, he just sometimes maybe it's a natural thing you would think from baseball or whatever, but some just don't seem like that's as simple as you would think.
Right. Well, I mean, it's definitely not something that you practice, and if it's not something that not necessarily that's natural, I don't think guys just want to slide. It's kind of a submissive move. But at the same time, you're submitting to the next play. You're submitting to the idea that one more yard, again, situationally, it depends. But, that one more yard is the difference between, you finishing in a game and us winning it on the last drive versus you being out the second half, or the second quarter, rather, to get that extra yard. So it's being smart. It's knowing when to slide, knowing when you can put your shoulder down, knowing when the team needs a spark. There's a lot of different aspects that come into, the half a second it takes to slide versus, put the shoulder down and roll. So
Bryce, there was a record number of draft picks just about 2-3 weeks ago for Baylor football, and then a bunch of guys signed undrafted free agent deals as well, double digits in total, and obviously a long way to go. But what would be, if you could speak to that group of players now entering the NFL, what would be your piece of advice to them?
Oh, man, just to take it in, just to absolutely enjoy every minute of every day. It can get daunting. It can get kind of, again, what I've talked about with college football throughout my many years is there's a purity to that level. And then in the NFL, it is a business. And so for those kids to have the time of their life is to just take every day, not for granted, but just to get to enjoy a different locker room. You're building a different resume now. And so those guys love seeing guys work. You know, if you put the time in and the effort in, you win over locker rooms, and if you do that, it becomes a really, really joyful time in your life.
Are you ready for OU?
Yeah, always ready for OU.
Man, we appreciate your time. Can't wait to see you soon, buddy. Thanks for your time. Appreciate the access.
Thank you, guys. Y'all be good.
Bryce Petty, former Baylor quarterback. They had just beaten Kansas, ready for OU, and they went up in 2014. Was that the year? Mm-hmm. When they went up to Oklahoma, had never won there. And
they beat their ass. That's what they did. That's what they did.
They were down early, like 10-0 or whatever it was, or 14-3 or whatever in Norman, and then just crushed them mentally and physically in a game that you wonder that Bob Stoops and company ever really recovered.
It's a good team. I don't know why you guys are asking these questions. Good team. They won the 12 last year. They're going to win it again this year. I don't know. It's a good team.
And that was a frustrating game for, I know, Oklahoma fans because they could not figure out what they were doing defensively, and Baylor just is like, okay, if you want to, cushion our receivers, then we'll just throw first down after first down after first down after first down all the way down the field, and that's what they did. And they did it multiple times, and I have no idea what was going on the OU sideline that day, but you're going to give them the room, then Baylor's going to take it, and they took it, and then, ultimately, that went from, down early to a straight-up butt kick him, but Bryce was a great quarterback, and it would have been really interesting to see in his scenario what would have happened if, NIL had been a thing. Yeah. Because he waited a long time, and there's going to be few and far between guys that wait as long as Bryce Petty waited, if we ever even see that again, quite frankly. So, it's kind of not a one-of-a-kind story, but it is a story that you're not going to hear that all that often these days, because even if a player's not even the level of a Bryce Petty, if there's just a little smoke about him, then somebody's, inevitably going to, hey, why don't you look over here? We got $100K in NIL or whatever the case may be. But thankfully for Baylor back then, that wasn't the case. And thankfully, he still could have transferred anyways, but he decided not to. And having that transfer rule was part of why. It's almost like those guardrails were in place for a reason, and guys didn't move around as much. And so Bryce stayed, and, they won 2 Big 12 titles as a result of that. So, a legend definitely here in Waco.
Well, and I think even that, like, you think about Bryce, it also kind of worked out for Baylor in that his last year at Midlothian, the team was not really all that good, so he was flying under the radar. Tennessee had reneged, Lane Kiffin had reneged on his scholarship when he took over as the head coach, so Bryce was kind of out there on the beach a little bit waiting for a scholarship, and then he went to Baylor and nobody saw him for a little bit, so I'm sure there was a good portion of the population of where Bryce could have and would have been good to transfer to, which would have been pretty much anywhere based on how well he played at Baylor, that would have maybe wanted him but didn't see him. It wasn't like it is now where it's kind of just, and that wasn't even that long ago.
Back on November the 1st of 2014, Baylor had won the Big 12 title with a win against Texas the year before. Paul Catalina and myself, we both tweeted out basically at the exact same time, within an hour. Very bizarre presser from Bryce Petty, answered every question with, "We're ready for OU." Mine was, Bryce Petty gives the best Arian Foster impression at his post-game press conference following the win against Kansas. He ready for OU, ready for OU. 1,300-plus days from the time he entered the campus at Baylor University until he started the game. He stayed committed, loyal to Art Briles and that coaching staff, and even lost the competitive race with Nick Florence the year before. Yeah, he now is a two-time and the only one who's ever won 2 championships in the Big 12 as a quarterback, starting quarterback at Baylor. Come back with a couple of other notes. Chat room is getting into who